It was just your typical Seattle day. Light and dark clouds intermingling together, sprinkling throughout the day, wind blowing near constantly. I was sitting in mine and Anna's office when the boss came in and dropped 2 huge boxes on my desk, nearly spilling my cup of coffee all over my keyboard. "Here, you and Anna are covering this case," he grunted. "Solve it fast." He walked out of the room and left me to the case. I wiped off the few drops of coffee that made it onto my suit. I sighed. You would think more boxes would mean an easier case to solve, more evidence, easier to find suspects, but no. Generally speaking, the more boxes the boss handed me, the more work I had ahead of me. My partner Anna wouldn't be pleased either. I sighed, sipped my coffee for a few, unfortunately short minutes, staring at the boxes in front of me. After much internal bargaining, I stood up, opened the first box, and peered inside. It was full of DVDs, journals, crime scene photographs, physical evidence. Hair, bits of flesh, nails, blood samples. Ugh. This already looks like it's going to be one of the most gruesome cases of the year. I looked at the clock, decided to take the boxes back home and organize them. I left the office building, walked out into the crisp autumn air. It struck me that not many people were out that evening. It was just after 5 o'clock. Shouldn't more people be getting off work? I reached my car, put the boxes on top of it, unlocked the door, and piled in. I put the boxes on the passenger seat of my beat-up car and started to drive home. I got home around 5:45 after stopping to get some food for dinner. I made myself tacos, sat down in front of the television. I ate quickly, watched my favorite comedy show. I would need something funny to get me through these boxes. I emptied the contents out into the table in front of me. I noticed that there were photos from different crime scenes, so I started organizing everything by victim. Why it wasn't done in the first place, I wasn't sure at that point, but as I started going through everything, I had an idea why. It was all so gruesome. I mean, no one would want to deal with this. Maybe that's why me and Anna got the case. We are the best detectives there. Stomachs of steel. Everyone probably assumed that we wouldn't be able to cope with it. Looking through it, though, I wasn't sure that we could. It wasn't like we had a choice, though. People were dying, and Anna and I were assigned to the case. So we had to end it. After organizing everything by victim, I started on the pile with the earliest dates, picking up the first of many photographs and gulping as I examined the picture. What was left of the body was mangled, as if someone had been eating it, ripping pieces of the flesh off, tearing it to bits. The body was lying in the bed. The sheets were soaked with fresh-looking blood. They were ripped to pieces, like the person had struggled. I couldn't even tell if it was a man or woman. The body was too destroyed. I thought it was a woman because the hair on the bed was long, but everything was too mangled and bloody to tell. The chest was torn to pieces, the ribs were broken, sticking out, and the heart was missing. 3 fingers were gone. The nose was gone. The eyes were lying on the floor. I could hardly bear to look. Not wanting to look at the picture anymore, I picked up the journal that they'd collected and put it in the box. I opened it, flipped to the latest entry. November 3rd, 2012, 8:50 p.m. I don't know how much longer I can take this. I'm scared all the time, paranoid. Something's always watching me, opening my doors and windows whenever I'm asleep. I'm sure that I've developed insomnia. I just can't sleep anymore. God, someone help me. I'm going insane. Something's going to get me. I just know it. Every day it's the same thing. I can't eat. I can't sleep. My mom told me to get help. I don't want help. I want this thing to leave me alone. God, I should have written this. Now I'm just even more scared. I remember growing up when I remember growing up when I was always scared of what was under the bed, behind the shower curtain, or waiting in the bed next to you, or waiting for you to roll over. That heaviness that you feel when you're so desperately want to look behind you, but you can't bring yourself to move. None of those were ever as terrifying as this feeling I'm plagued with now. I know I'm going to die. Whoever reads this, you all know what I'm talking about. That overbearing paranoia and fear of your own imagination when you sit in a dark room all by yourself. The writing was shaky and specks of blood covered the page, like it had opened when she was being murdered, and they say that they found it on the floor by the bed. I looked through some of the previous entries, and a lot of the same paranoia, fear, opening doors, windows, feelings of being watched. I wondered what this thing was. Seattle is thought of as the hippie coffee-drinking and pot-smoking city, but considering how relaxed everyone is, as there's a lot of crazy stuff that happens here. Washington is just serial killer central. It at least looked like that's what we had on our hands. 3 killings in the same style, bodies torn to shreds, appearing to be eaten. I flipped to the first entry of the journal. November 1st, 11:36 a.m. My windows keep opening. They're closed when I go to sleep, open when I wake up. Maybe it's just an animal, like a squirrel or something crawling around in the tree outside my window and crawling through. I think I'll set up a video camera tonight, try to catch it. If I didn't have to wear these stupid earplugs every night, I could just wake up when it opens. And it has a really bad squeak when you open it. If the baby would stop crying long enough for me to get to sleep without earplugs, I could find out what's making my window open. These damn neighbors. The first entry in the journal was only 3 days before the last entry. Things escalated quickly after that. All the rest of the entries showed panic and fear, and she was terrified after that first night of filming. It was getting hard for me to handle this. I mean, even with the canned laughter in the background, I packed up the boxes, being careful not to look at those damn photos anymore. Put the box aside. I just watched some TV for a while, take my mind off everything. I woke up the next morning on the couch. My apartment was cold. I stood up from the couch, sore from a night of awkward sleeping. Took a shower, got dressed, left for the office. Calling Anna when I drove. She said she'd be in a little late, and she just woke up. I stopped at the Starbucks down the street for the office, got us both coffees. We really needed to get through all the contents of the box, so we could start to think about who the sadistic killer was. I took the boxes out of my car after I parked, packed them up on top of the trunk, put the 2 cups of coffee on top of them, and carefully carried them into our office. When I got to the office, it was cold there too. Colder than usual. I turned on the heat, took a sip of my coffee, leaving my suit coat on. Anna arrived 10 minutes after I did, and gratefully took the coffee. "So what do we have?" she asked. "I don't know if you want to know," I said, trying to sound lighthearted. "Oh, please," she chuckled. "We can handle anything." I sighed and opened the boxes for her, pulled out the pictures from the first crime scene and showed them to her. She gasped as she looked at them. She put her hand to her face and grabbed the photos. I had shown her the only picture I'd looked at thoroughly. I could understand her disgust. "What kind of sick freak can do this sort of thing to someone?" she said, more quietly than usual. "This psychotic nutjob stole her heart. He tore her to shreds. What? Who could do that?" "I don't know, Anna. I was wondering those same things last night," I said. I only looked at that picture before I couldn't do it anymore. After that, I started reading through the journal of the first victim I'd been keeping. Grabbed it out of the box, opened it to the first entry, read it to her, and the few from the second day, where she was starting to panic. What do you think? Could it be her ex? Whoever she and her ex are? She talks about something standing outside of her window, so maybe he was stalking her. That's possible, Anna replied. But have all 3 of the victims dated the same man? Oh, I don't know. We kept going through the boxes. Hours dragged by all too slowly. We read the journals, all with no clues as to who the murderer was. We looked at the pictures, all so grotesque that we could hardly bear to look through them all. Every picture was of a different limb disconnected from the body, sprawled across the room, or bits of torn flesh and spattered blood around the crime scene. The blood and guts-filled images were stained into our minds by the time our lunch hour had come. I don't know if I'd be able to eat, I said, almost jokingly, as we walked out of the office to get lunch. Anna laughed a little. I know what you mean. It's probably the worst case I've dealt with. Over lunch we discussed theories. Whodunit type theories, but none of them really made sense. The X idea could be plausible, but what was the likelihood of 2 women and 1 man in a city as big as Seattle dating the same guy? He could just be a serial killer, but why was he targeting these young people? Maybe they knew some of the same people. One of those people happened to be a psychopath. There were just too many options to narrow it down this early in the investigation. After the last few hours of work, Anna took the box holding the case home, and I took the other 2. I was going to watch the DVDs they'd found on the scene. I got home, made myself some dinner, sat down on the couch. After eating, I popped in the DVD labeled Night 1 and watched. I fell asleep 10 minutes through, and woke up the next morning, almost late again. I made my way back to the office as fast as I could and told Anna that I'd fallen asleep, didn't manage to get through the whole thing. She said it was okay. We could watch 1 or 2 of them then. We situated ourselves around my computer and put in the first disc. Nothing much happened except for the near constant cries of a baby. We were fast-forwarding through the first few hours, but stopped when we saw something strange. Something crawled up the tree outside the window and sat there, unmoving. All we could see was a black silhouette of a strange figure. We went to one of the briefing rooms where there was better tape evidence viewing equipment. We hooked everything up, got back to where we were on the tape, and zoomed in as far as we could, but we still couldn't make out the figure clearly. It appeared to have something on its wrist as it opened the window, and we assumed that it was a man based on how huge the hand was. For the whole video, we sat at the window. For the whole video, he sat at the window, staring at the woman. Just staring. It looked like he was mumbling to himself violently, like he was battling with 2 voices in his head. Nearly dawn, he jumped out of the tree that he was perched in, startling the woman awake. Anna looked at me with horror when the video ended. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded at her. I'll take the rest of the tapes and watch them tonight, I said, sparing her sanity. Go home. Take a break. She nodded, stood up to leave. I followed her. Even though it was still only lunch hour, I went home, DVDs and soda in hand, to watch the videos before the Christmas party. Definitely not an activity to encourage holiday spirit, but what can I do? I walked into my apartment, dropped the DVDs and soda down on the couch, and went to make a sandwich. When I came back into the living room area, the window was open. I didn't remember opening it. I tried to brush it off as nothing, but after watching the DVD of the first night of filming, I was starting to become paranoid. Maybe the thing would come after me since I was assigned the goal of capturing him. Maybe he didn't want me to capture him and would kill everyone who tried. These thoughts ran through my head and made me more and more paranoid with every second. I shoved them out of my mind, closed the window, making sure to lock it, and I ate my sandwich quickly, gulped down some of the soda to wake me up, put on the next DVD. It started off the same, except the woman had left a candle lit by the window, probably so she could see who was there. It didn't help much, though. I could make out what looked like bracelets dangling off his wrists, clanking whenever he moved. He pressed his hands and face against the locked window. I couldn't make out eyes, hair, or even a human face. All I could see was a nose, which looked broken, and a mouth. It looked severely chapped. And the whole video progressed the same way that the first had. He stood there till dawn, watching, muttering. I wish I could see what he was, but at the same time I didn't. Just from his outline, he looked grotesque. And the second video ended with the creature leaving just as he had the night before. And I remember reading that on the third day, the woman had called the police. I don't remember anybody telling me that someone had called or claiming to have been stalked by night or claiming someone was standing outside of her window at night. She wrote in a journal that she called someone to come stay the night with her. During his interview, we found out that he was her cousin. Now, I know that he had found the body. He woke up screaming in the middle of the night, but claimed that he couldn't open the door in time to save her. He was held as a suspect in custody inside of a mental hospital. The incident had caused severe mental damage. He refused to discuss the event and only muttered to himself. He was the second victim his killer claimed. I turned on all the lights in my apartment, becoming paranoid myself, before watching the next and last DVD. I opened up the woman's journal again and read through the entries that she'd written her last night. November 3rd, 2012, 5:17 p.m. I called the police. They wouldn't help me. They don't believe me. They think I'm crazy. I tell them someone with something on its wrists and an ugly face keeps opening my window and trying to open them if they're locked, but they just don't care. I called Bill and asked him to stay over tonight. I put in the DVD, prepared for what I'm about to see. I don't think anyone could successfully prepare themselves for that, though. What I saw was beyond horrific. It wasn't grotesque, it wasn't horrifying, it wasn't appalling. None of those words would suffice in description. The sights that I had to sit through. The DVD started with her locking the windows and closing her curtains. Her cousin walked into the room and assured her, rubbing her arm. "I'll be in the next room," he said to her. The woman nodded. He walked away. She lit 2 candles, put one next to her bed, one by the window. We found them on the floor, both labeled Vanilla Honey Stress Relief Candle. And the woman curled up under the blankets, facing towards the window. A few hours passed. Nothing happened. Even just fast-forwarding through the DVD was suspenseful enough to make my heart race. I would fast-forward for a few minutes, press play, fast-forward for a few seconds, just in case the murderer came in. I didn't want to miss it, even though I did want to. At around 2 a.m. in the tape, I pushed play. As I closed the door, I heard a loud crash and ran back to the living room, my fists raised. I looked around and saw no broken items. I started to hear loud thumps, went to my door, looked through the peephole. My heart was pounding even harder than it was. I went back to my living room. The thumping got louder. I looked at my TV screen and the camera was shaking. I knew this was it. I sat on my knees in front of the TV. My palms were sweaty. My hands were shaking. I felt like I was going to puke, thinking about how she was about to die. And I was the first to witness it. The door opened slowly, eerily opposite her bed. The man trudges into the room, dragging his feet, and the door swings closed behind her, without him even touching it. And he makes his way to the side of the woman's bed, the side with the candle. The flame flickers as he moves closer, and closer to her bed, and his steps were loud and slow. Thump, thump, thump. Finally, he makes it to her bed. He only looks at the camera for a split second before he turns his back and faces the woman. I'm not sure what I say, but whatever it was disgusting. I'm not sure what I saw, but whatever it was disgusting. I couldn't make out any eyes, and his spine stuck out of his back, and his whole body was naked. He was tall, maybe 6'5", possibly. The bracelets on his wrists were not bracelets at all, but shackles with broken chains. He had them on his ankles, too. No one mentioned this was a rape murder, but with this naked man standing beside a woman's bed, what else would I think? As he stands there, I heard muttering in a low, menacing voice. I couldn't make out what he was saying. He bent over, slowly, eerily, and lifted the woman's hair, smelling it deeply. She started to wake up, rolled over, mumbling, "Bill, what are you doing?" When she saw what was waiting for her, she screamed. After less than a second, I heard pounding on the door and Bill yelling, screaming, begging to be let in, asking what was going on, but the door, which wasn't barricaded, wouldn't open. The woman started panicking, struggling to get from under the blankets, and falls onto the floor in the process, with speed that I didn't think the creature or human could possibly possess. He was then on top of the woman, ripping the woman's fragile body into pieces. He ripped and tore bits of her skin off, threw them around the room. He was laughing maniacally, getting progressively louder and more joyous as the woman died beneath him. I couldn't see what was going on, but the sheer terror, the horror of the situation made my imagination run wild, made the situation even more terrifying. Soon the woman stopped struggling. The creature smiled as he tore her heart out from her broken chest and ate it. I didn't see him do anything to her fingers, but 7 of them were nowhere to be found when the CSI team arrived. The naked creature stood up and walked towards the camera, and I could see what this thing was as the candlelight shone on his face. He had skin sewn over his eyes. The rest of him, too, was bits of various skin sewn together to create a human-like figure. His lips were chapped to the point of breaking. His nose was extremely crooked. He was bald. The blood all over his body made him even more nightmarish. He blew out the candle in the nightstand and laughed. Blood spat out of his mouth. He walked to the window, blew out the second candle. Breaking the window, he jumps out. All the while, Bill is screaming. I sat in silent horror. Began to hear thumping again. Terrified, I walked slowly around my house searching for the source. I found nothing. The last room I checked was my bathroom. I opened the shower curtain, and just as I did so, the bathroom light exploded, giving me a near heart attack. Okay, I said to myself. I need a break. Just go to the Christmas party now. Take my mind off this. As I walked out the door, I thought of what this creature would be called. Stitch?